18-year-old Emma Reeves stood outside the administrative building at Fort Benning, Georgia, clutching a worn manila folder against her chest. The July heat pressed down on her like a weight, but she barely noticed. She had driven 12 hours straight from the mountains of West Virginia to get here, and she wasn't leaving until she got what she came for. Inside the folder was everything she needed: her birth certificate, high school diploma, her father's military records, and a stack of competition certificates that told a story most people wouldn't believe just from looking at her. At 5'2" and barely 100 pounds, with blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and a dusting of freckles across her nose, Emma knew she didn't look like much. People had been underestimating her since she was old enough to hold a rifle. She was used to it. The receptionist at the front desk looked up when Emma entered. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to speak with Colonel Hayes," Emma said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "About the Army Marksmanship Unit trials." The receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am, but I need to speak with him. It's important." "The AMU trials were last month, honey, and they're only open to active-duty soldiers. Are you enlisted?" "Not yet, but I will be. I just need to talk to Colonel Hayes first." The receptionist gave her a sympathetic smile, the kind of smile that said she dealt with overconfident young people every day. "Colonel Hayes is very busy. If you want to join the Army, you need to speak with a recruiter. There's an office in Columbus, about 15 minutes from here." "I've already talked to recruiters," Emma said patiently. "I need to talk to Colonel Hayes specifically about the Marksmanship Unit." Before the receptionist could respond, a door down the hallway opened and a tall man in uniform emerged, carrying a stack of files. He was in his mid-50s, with iron-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent 30 years in the military. Colonel Michael Hayes, according to the nameplate on his uniform. Emma didn't hesitate. "Colonel Hayes." He looked up, mildly surprised to see a teenage girl in civilian clothes standing in his administrative building. "Sir, my name is Emma Reeves. I'd like to request an opportunity to try out for the Army Marksmanship Unit." Colonel Hayes studied her for a moment, then glanced at the receptionist, who shrugged helplessly. "Young lady," he said, his voice not unkind but firm, "the AMU is comprised of the Army's best shooters. They're world-class athletes who compete internationally. It's not something you just walk in and try out for." "I know that, sir, but I believe I qualify." Hayes shifted the files in his arms. "Are you enlisted?" "Not yet, sir." "Then you don't qualify. You need to be active duty, you need to be recommended by your commanding officer, and you need to have demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills in a military context." He started walking toward his office. "Talk to a recruiter about enlisting. Work hard, show what you can do, and maybe in a few years you can request an evaluation." "I can outshoot anyone you have, sir," Emma said quietly. Hayes stopped walking. He turned back to her, and this time there was a hint of annoyance in his expression. "That's quite a claim from someone who's never served." "Yes, sir, but it's true." Hayes sighed. "Miss Reeves, I appreciate your confidence, but I don't have time for this. I have a unit to run and—" "My father was Sergeant First Class Daniel Reeves," Emma interrupted. "He served in the 75th Ranger Regiment. He was killed in Afghanistan in 2014. Hayes's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss, but that doesn't change the requirements for the AMU." Emma opened her folder and pulled out a certificate, holding it up. "This is from the National Junior Rifle Championship. I won the small bore competition 3 years in a row. I hold the junior national record." "That's impressive, but—" She pulled out another certificate. "This is from the Civilian Marksmanship Program. I scored expert qualification in every category. I was the youngest person to ever achieve that." Hayes's jaw tightened. "Miss Reeves." "This is my scorecard from the West Virginia State Championship last month. I beat 247 competitors, including former military and law enforcement." She pulled out more papers, her voice growing more passionate. "I can show you 50 different competitions, sir. I've been shooting since I was 6 years old. My father taught me. It's all I have left of him." The hallway had gone quiet. The receptionist was watching with wide eyes. A few other soldiers had emerged from offices, drawn by the commotion. Colonel Hayes looked at the papers in Emma's hands, then at her face. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why is this so important to you?" Emma's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. Because my father gave his life for this country, he was the best soldier, the best man I ever knew. And before he deployed that last time, he told me I had a gift. He said I could shoot better than anyone he'd ever seen and that I should use that gift to serve just like he did. She paused, swallowing hard. I made him a promise, sir. I promised I'd make him proud. I promised I'd serve, and I keep my promises. The hallway was silent. Colonel Hayes studied her for a long moment. You said you can outshoot anyone in my unit, he said finally. Yes, sir. That's a bold claim. The AMU has Olympic medalists. We have world record holders. I know, sir. Hayes glanced at the papers in her hands, then at the soldiers watching from the hallway. Emma could see him calculating, weighing options. All right, Miss Reeves, he said slowly. Here's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow morning, 0800 hours, I'll give you exactly one chance, one test. If you fail, you walk away and go through the normal enlistment process like everyone else. Understood? Yes, sir. And when you fail, Hayes continued, his tone making it clear he expected exactly that, you don't come back here making demands. You accept it with grace and find another way to serve your country. There are plenty of important jobs in the Army besides marksmanship. I understand, sir. Hayes nodded curtly. Be here at 0730. Bring athletic clothes and be prepared to spend the day. And Miss Reeves, don't make me regret this. You won't, sir, thank you. After Hayes left, Emma walked out of the building on shaky legs. Only when she reached her truck, her father's old Ford F-150, the one he had taught her to drive in, did she let herself feel the weight of what had just happened. She had one shot, one chance to prove herself. She pulled out her phone and looked at her screensaver. A photo of her father in his Ranger uniform, his arm around a 12-year-old Emma at a shooting range, both of them grinning at the camera. She had been holding a rifle almost as big as she was, and she had just shot her first perfect score. Tomorrow, Dad, she whispered, tomorrow I make you proud. She spent that night in a cheap motel near the base, going through her pre-competition routine. She cleaned and checked her rifle, a custom .308 that her father had started building before his death and that she had finished with the help of his old Ranger buddies. She visualized the shots, controlled her breathing, calmed her mind. Her phone rang around 9 o'clock. It was Tommy, her boyfriend, back home. How'd it go? He asked. I got a tryout tomorrow morning. That's amazing. I knew you could do it. He doesn't think I can make it, Tommy. The colonel. He thinks I'm wasting his time. Then you'll prove him wrong. You always do. Emma smiled. Tommy had been her rock since her father died, the one constant in a life that had been turned upside down. I miss you. I miss you too, but you've got this. You're the best shooter I've ever seen. Hell, you're the best shooter anyone's ever seen. After they hung up, Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow she would either begin the journey her father had wanted for her, or she would have to find another path. She fell asleep clutching her father's dog tags, the same tags she had worn around her neck every day since the Army had handed them to her mother at his funeral. Tomorrow she would show them. Tomorrow, Emma Reeves would prove that being underestimated was the biggest mistake Colonel Hayes had ever made. Emma arrived at Fort Benning at 07:15, wearing athletic gear and carrying her rifle case. The morning was already hot, the Georgia sun beating down mercilessly. Colonel Hayes was waiting outside the marksmanship facility with 3 other soldiers. One was a woman in her 30s with sergeant stripes and a no-nonsense expression. The other 2 were men, both looking like they spent significant time in the gym. Miss Reeves, Hayes said, this is Sergeant First Class Linda Martinez, Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, and Sergeant Tim O'Connor. They're 3 of our best shooters. They'll be administering your test today. Emma nodded to each of them. Martinez gave her a brief, evaluating look. Webb seemed amused. O'Connor looked openly skeptical. Here's how this works, Hayes continued. You'll shoot 5 different tests: 50-meter precision rifle, 200-meter target engagement, moving target qualification, stress shoot, and long-range marksmanship at 600 meters. If you can't pass basic Army qualification standards on any of these, we're done. Understood? Yes, sir. Sergeant Martinez will supervise. I have meetings this morning, but I'll check in later to see how you did. The way he said it made clear he expected her to wash out quickly. After Hayes left, Martinez gestured toward the range. All right, Miss Reeves, let's see what you've got. We'll start with the 50-meter precision test. Have you shot this distance before? Yes, Sergeant. Good, you'll have 10 shots to hit 10 targets, each one progressively smaller. You need 8 hits to qualify. Emma unpacked her rifle methodically, her movements practiced and efficient. She could feel the 3 soldiers watching her, could sense their doubt. The rifle looked almost comically large in her small hands. Webb chuckled. You sure you can handle that thing? It's probably heavier than you are. Emma looked up at him, her expression neutral. It's a Remington 700 with a custom barrel and a Schmidt and Bender scope. Weighs 11 pounds, 4 ounces. I can handle it. O'Connor raised his eyebrows. You know your equipment, I'll give you that. Emma settled into position, the rifle an extension of her body. She had done this 10,000 times, in competitions, in practice, on the mountain ranges back home with her father. She controlled her breathing, found her natural pause between heartbeats and began. The first shot, dead center. The second, perfect. Third, fourth, fifth, each one exactly where it needed to be. By the 7th shot, the soldiers had stopped chatting. By the 10th shot, they were staring in silence. 10 targets, 10 perfect hits. Martinez checked the targets carefully, then looked at Emma with new respect. All right, that was very good, moving on to 200 meters. The next 3 tests went the same way. Emma didn't just qualify, she shot near-perfect scores on each one. The moving targets, the stress shoot where she had to sprint, do push-ups, then immediately engage targets while her heart rate was elevated. She handled all of it with calm precision. Webb was no longer smiling. O'Connor had gone quiet, watching Emma with a mix of disbelief and growing respect. Before the final test, the long-range 600-meter shoot, Martinez pulled Emma aside. Where did you learn to shoot like this? She asked quietly. My father, Sergeant. He was a ranger. He taught me from the time I could hold a rifle. Martinez nodded slowly. Daniel Reeves. I remember hearing about him. He was killed in Helmand Province, right? Yes, Sergeant. I'm sorry, I didn't know he had a daughter. Martinez paused. He must have been one hell of a teacher. He was the best, Sergeant. For the 600-meter test, they moved to the long-range facility. This was where Emma's skills would truly be tested. 600 meters was over a third of a mile. At that distance, wind, humidity, elevation, everything mattered. Colonel Hayes appeared just as they were setting up. How's she doing? He asked Martinez. Sir, you need to see this for yourself. Hayes looked surprised but said nothing. He settled in to observe. Emma checked her equipment, calculated the environmental factors, made her adjustments. The target at 600 meters looked impossibly small through the scope. She took her time, controlled her breathing, and began to shoot. The first shot hit center mass. The second the same, 5 shots all grouped within a 3-inch circle at 600 meters. Hayes grabbed the spotting scope and looked at the target himself. When he lowered the scope, his expression had completely changed. Miss Reeves, he said quietly, where did you learn environmental calculation? My father taught me the basics, sir. Then I studied ballistics on my own. I've been competing in long-range competitions since I was 14. Hayes handed the spotting scope to Webb. Check the records. What's our AMU qualification standard at 600 meters? Webb consulted a clipboard. 6-inch grouping, sir. And what's our unit record? 4.2 inches, sir. Set by Sergeant Martinez last year. Hayes looked at Emma. Measure that grouping. Webb measured carefully, then looked up stunned. 2.8 inches, sir. The range went silent. That's impossible, O'Connor said. She's using a standard rifle, standard ammunition. Nobody can shoot that tight at 600 meters without competition equipment. Apparently somebody can, Martinez said quietly, looking at Emma with something like awe. Colonel Hayes walked over to where Emma was carefully packing up her rifle. Miss Reeves, I owe you an apology. I assumed you were just another confident kid who didn't know what they were getting into. I was wrong. Thank you, sir. I want you to come back tomorrow. We have an evaluation process for potential AMU members. It's a week-long test. If you perform like you did today, consistently, you'll be offered a position. Emma felt her heart soar. Sir, I'm not enlisted yet. That can be arranged. We can fast-track your enlistment if you're selected for the unit. It's unusual but not unprecedented for exceptional talent. Hayes paused. But I need to be clear about something. What you did today was impressive, exceptional even. But the AMU requires more than just shooting skills. It requires discipline, teamwork, physical fitness, and mental toughness. If you're selected, you'll be competing against Olympic-level athletes. The standards are higher than anything you've experienced. Are you prepared for that? Emma thought about her father, about the promises she had made, about every early morning practice session, every competition, every moment that had led her to this point. Yes, sir, I'm prepared. That evening, Emma called her mother from the motel. Baby, how did it go? Her mother asked, her voice tight with hope and anxiety. I did it, Mom. I passed. They want me to come back for a full evaluation. Her mother's sob of joy came through the phone clearly. Oh, Emma, your father would be so proud. I'm so proud. I haven't made it yet, Mom. This was just the first step. But you made them see you. That's all you needed, a chance to show them what you can do. After hanging up, Emma sat on the motel bed, processing everything that had happened. She had broken their qualification record on her first try. She had made hardened military marksmen stop and stare. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would be competing against the best. Tomorrow the real test would begin. Her phone buzzed with a text from Martinez. Get some rest. Tomorrow we find out if you're really as good as you look today. Don't make me regret believing in you. Emma smiled and typed back, I won't, Sergeant, I promise. She fell asleep that night dreaming of her father, of the day he had first put a rifle in her hands and said, Emma, you've got something special. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're not good enough because of how you look or how old you are. Let your shooting do the talking. Tomorrow, her shooting would speak volumes. Tomorrow, Emma Reeves would show them she was just getting started. The week-long evaluation began at 0500 the next morning. Emma arrived to find 12 other candidates assembled, all active-duty soldiers, all with impressive service records, all looking at her with curiosity and skepticism when they realized she was the civilian teenager Colonel Hayes had mentioned. The group was an intimidating collection of talent. There was a Marine sniper with 2 combat deployments, an Army Ranger who had won multiple military competitions, and several others with Olympic shooting experience. Sergeant Martinez introduced herself as the lead evaluator. For the next 7 days, you will be tested on every aspect of marksmanship: precision, speed, adaptability, performance under stress, and physical endurance. Only the top 3 candidates will be offered positions in the AMU. Questions. A tall Marine raised his hand. Sergeant, I heard one of the candidates is a civilian. Is that true? Martinez looked at Emma. Miss Reeves is here on a special evaluation. She's demonstrated sufficient skill to warrant consideration. With all due respect, Sergeant, the Marine said, the AMU is for professional soldiers, not kids playing with Daddy's rifle. Emma felt the anger flash through her but kept her face neutral. She had heard worse. With all due respect, Corporal, Martinez replied coolly, Miss Reeves broke our long-range qualification record yesterday, on her first attempt. So I suggest you worry less about who else is here and more about your own performance. The Marine's face reddened, but he said nothing. The first 3 days were brutal. They shot in the rain, in high winds, in darkness. They did physical training between shooting sessions, running, calisthenics, obstacle courses. They had to maintain and repair their equipment, calculate complex ballistics on the fly, and perform under conditions designed to break their concentration. Emma struggled with the physical components. She was fit, but she was also small, and exercises like carrying heavy ammunition cans and dragging weighted dummies exposed her size disadvantage. More than once, she saw other candidates smirking as she struggled with a task that they handled easily. But when it came to shooting, Emma was in a different class entirely. On the second day, they ran a precision drill where candidates had to engage 12 targets at varying distances in under 2 minutes. Emma hit all 12 with time to spare. On the third day, a stress test that involved shooting after completing a grueling obstacle course, Emma posted the highest score despite being visibly exhausted. By the fourth day, the other candidates had stopped smirking. They were watching her, studying her technique, trying to understand how someone so young and small could shoot with such devastating accuracy. The Marine who had questioned her presence, Corporal Jake Simmons, approached her during a break on day 4. "I owe you an apology," he said bluntly. "I made assumptions that was wrong." Emma looked up at him, surprised. "Thank you. Can I ask you something? How do you stay so calm? You're half the size of everyone here, you're the youngest by at least 5 years, and you just don't seem rattled by anything." Emma considered the question. "My father used to say that shooting is 90% mental. The gun doesn't care how big you are or how old you are. It only cares whether you can control your mind and body well enough to put the bullet where it needs to go." Simmons nodded slowly. "Your father was Daniel Reeves, right? The Ranger." "Yes. I served with some Rangers in Syria. They talked about him, said he was one of the best." "He was. He taught you well." On the 5th day, they faced the most challenging test yet, unknown distance shooting. They were taken to a range with targets at unmarked distances. No ballistic calculators, no rangefinders. They had to estimate distance, calculate wind and elevation, and engage targets using only their knowledge and experience. This was where Emma's years of practice in the West Virginia mountains paid off. She had learned to shoot in terrain where distances were hard to judge, where wind swirled unpredictably through valleys, where every shot required careful calculation. She hit 17 out of 20 targets. The next closest candidate hit 12. That evening, Colonel Hayes called her to his office. Sergeant Martinez was there, along with 2 other senior NCOs Emma didn't recognize. "Miss Reeves," Hayes began, "you've performed exceptionally well this week, better than we anticipated." "Thank you, sir. However, we need to discuss something. The AMU requires a minimum 3-year service commitment. If you're selected, you'll need to complete basic training, advanced individual training, and then serve with the unit. That's a significant commitment for someone your age. Have you thought about what you'd be giving up?" Emma thought about Tommy, about her mother, about the life she could have back home in West Virginia. She thought about college, about being a normal teenager, about all the things she would miss. Then she thought about her father, about the promise she had made, about the gift she had been given and the responsibility that came with it. "I've thought about it, sir. This is what I want. It's what I'm meant to do." Hayes studied her for a long moment. "You remind me of your father. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. He had the same focus, the same dedication." "That's the greatest compliment you could give me, sir." Martinez spoke up. "Emma, I'm going to be straight with you. If the selection was based purely on shooting ability, you'd be the top candidate. Your skills are extraordinary. But there are concerns about your age, your lack of military experience, and whether you can handle the physical demands of the job." "I can handle it, Sergeant. The next 2 days will determine that. We have one final test. It's called the Crucible. It's a 36-hour evolution that combines everything: shooting, physical challenges, problem-solving, teamwork, and stress management. Candidates have failed out during this test before. It's designed to find your breaking point." "I understand, Sergeant." "Do you?" Martinez leaned forward. "Emma, you're 18 years old. The other candidates are hardened soldiers with years of experience. They've been through combat, through real stress. You've been through competitions. It's not the same." Emma met her gaze steadily. "My father was killed when I was 14, Sergeant. I found out when 2 uniformed soldiers showed up at our door. I watched my mother collapse in grief. I had to be strong for her, had to hold our family together while she fell apart. I learned to shoot through tears, to find calm in chaos, to keep going when everything inside me wanted to quit." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I know what stress feels like. I know what it means to perform when everything is falling apart. And I'm ready." The room was silent. Finally, Hayes nodded. "All right, Miss Reeves. The Crucible starts tomorrow at 0400. Get some rest. You're going to need it." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk. The Army had given the candidates temporary quarters on base and thought about what was coming. 36 hours, one final test. Everything she had worked for came down to this. Her phone buzzed quietly. A text from her mother. "Thinking of you, baby. Your father is watching over you. I know he is." And another from Tommy. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. You've already proven you belong." Emma closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in months. She prayed. "Dad," she whispered into the darkness, "if you're out there, if you can hear me, I need your help. I need you to guide my shots, steady my hands, calm my mind. I need you to help me be strong enough to finish what we started, please." The room was silent. but Emma felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. Tomorrow would be the hardest challenge of her life. But she wouldn't face it alone. She fell asleep clutching her father's dog tags, ready for whatever the crucible would bring. The crucible began in darkness. At 0400, the candidates were awakened by the sound of blank ammunition and shouting instructors. They had 60 seconds to dress, grab their gear, and assemble outside. Emma's heart pounded as she ran into the night. The next 36 hours would be a blur of challenges designed to break them down, to find their limits, to separate the truly exceptional from the merely good. The first 12 hours were physical hell. They ran 10 miles with full packs, crawled through mud pits, scaled walls, and dragged weighted sleds across obstacle courses. Between each physical challenge, they had to shoot, sometimes precision shots, sometimes rapid fire, sometimes at unknown distances. Emma's small size worked against her in the physical challenges. She was slower on the runs, struggled more with the heavy equipment. But she refused to quit, refused to fall behind. When her muscles screamed and her lungs burned, she thought about her father, about what he had endured as a ranger, and she kept moving. And when it came time to shoot, exhausted and shaking, she was flawless. By hour 18, 3 candidates had dropped out. The remaining 9, including Emma, looked like they had been through a war. Covered in mud, soaked with sweat despite the rain that had started falling, running on nothing but adrenaline and determination. The next challenge was a team exercise. The candidates were divided into 3 teams of 3 and given a complex mission. Navigate to a target location using only map and compass, engage multiple targets under simulated combat conditions, then extract to an exfil point, all while being harassed by instructors playing enemy forces. Emma was teamed with Corporal Simmons and an Army sergeant named Lisa Chen. They worked together surprisingly well, with Simmons leading navigation, Chen handling communications, and Emma serving as primary marksman. When they reached the target area, they found a challenging scenario. 12 targets at varying distances, some moving, some stationary, all partially obscured by terrain and vegetation. They had to engage all 12 within 10 minutes while under simulated fire. Emma settled into position, while Simmons and Chen provided security and target identification. Target 3 o'clock, 200 meters, Chen called. Emma acquired fired, hit. Target 11 o'clock, moving left to right, approximately 300 meters. Emma led the target, controlled her breathing, fired, hit. They worked through all 12 targets with 7 minutes to spare. When the evaluators checked the results, all 12 targets showed kill shots. Damn, Simmons muttered, looking at Emma with newfound respect. You don't miss, do you? Not if I can help it, Emma replied, too exhausted to smile. By hour 30, Emma was running on fumes. She had been awake for 26 hours straight. Her body ached everywhere. Her hands trembled from fatigue. Several times she caught herself starting to doze off, even while standing. The instructors knew exactly what they were doing. This was when most candidates broke down, when exhaustion overrode training, when mistakes happened. The final test came at hour 34. Each remaining candidate, now down to 7, had to complete one last shooting challenge, a single shot at 1,000 meters, one of the longest shots in military marksmanship. One attempt, pass or fail. They drew numbers to determine shooting order. Emma drew number 6. She watched as the first candidate missed. The second hit but barely, the third missed, the fourth hit solidly, the fifth missed. Then it was Emma's turn. Colonel Hayes had appeared to observe the final test. He stood with Sergeant Martinez and a group of other officers Emma didn't recognize, all watching silently. Emma approached the firing line, her legs shaking with exhaustion. 1,000 meters, over half a mile. With wind, with her hands trembling from fatigue, with her mind foggy from sleep deprivation. She settled into position and looked through the scope. The target seemed impossibly far away, shimmering in the heat rising from the Georgia red clay. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. She heard her father's voice in her memory, as clear as if he were standing beside her. When you're exhausted, when everything hurts, when you don't think you can make the shot, that's when it matters most. That's when you find out who you really are. She opened her eyes and began her calculations. Wind speed, direction, humidity, elevation. She made her adjustments with trembling hands, forced her breathing to steady, found that calm place inside where nothing existed except her, the rifle, and the target. She could feel everyone watching, could feel the weight of expectations, of judgment, of doubt. She pushed it all away. There was only the shot. Emma found her natural pause, took up the trigger slack, and fired. The crack of the rifle echoed across the range. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the radio crackled, "Hit center mass." Emma heard the words but didn't react. She was too tired, too far gone to feel anything. She made the rifle safe, stood up, and swayed on her feet. Sergeant Martinez was suddenly there, steadying her. "Easy, Emma, you're done, you made it." The last candidate shot and missed. Then it was over. 36 hours of hell finished. Colonel Hayes gathered the 7 remaining candidates. They looked like survivors of a disaster, muddy, exhausted, barely able to stand. "You've completed the crucible," Hayes said. "You should all be proud. However, as I stated at the beginning, only 3 of you will be offered positions in the AMU." He paused, looking at each candidate in turn. "Corporal Simmons, your performance was excellent. Sergeant Chen, your leadership and technical skills were outstanding. You're both offered positions." The 2 soldiers tried to maintain military bearing, but Emma could see their relief and joy. "The 3rd position," Hayes continued, "was the subject of significant debate among the evaluators. The candidate in question showed exceptional shooting skills, but struggled with some physical requirements due to size and age limitations." Emma's heart sank. She knew he was talking about her. She had failed. "However," Hayes said, his eyes moving to Emma, "this candidate also demonstrated something we value even more than physical strength: mental toughness, the ability to perform under extreme stress, the determination to never quit no matter how hard things got." He paused. "Miss Emma Reeves, on behalf of the United States Army Marksmanship Unit, I am offering you a position." Emma's knees nearly buckled. Martinez had to steady her again. "Sir," Emma's voice cracked, "really? Really? In fact, I have some additional news. During your evaluation this week, you broke 3 unit records: long-range precision, stress-shoot performance, and moving target engagement. Your 1,000-meter shot just now, made under extreme fatigue, was the best final shot we've ever recorded in the Crucible." Hayes stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Miss Reeves. Your father would be very proud." Emma shook his hand, tears streaming down her face. She tried to speak but couldn't find words. The other candidates gathered around, congratulating her, even those who hadn't been selected. The Marine who had doubted her that first day pulled her into a brief hug. "You earned this," he said quietly. "Don't let anyone ever tell you different." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Emma was fast-tracked through enlistment and sent to basic training. As expected, she struggled with some of the physical requirements, but her determination and her marksmanship skills set her apart. Her drill sergeants knew she was AMU-bound and pushed her hard, knowing she represented something special. 3 months later, Private Emma Reeves officially joined the Army Marksmanship Unit. 6 months after that, she competed in her first international competition. The U.S. Army team traveled to Germany for the European Shooting Championship. Emma was the youngest competitor by nearly a decade, and once again, people underestimated her. Until she shot. She won gold in the long-range precision event, setting a new competition record. She won silver in the team competition, and she became the youngest American ever to medal in the championship. When she stood on the podium, listening to the national anthem play, wearing her Army uniform with the AMU patch on her shoulder, she thought about her father. She could almost feel him there, watching, proud. After the competition, Colonel Hayes, who had traveled with the team, found her at the hotel. "Emma, I have something for you." He handed her a small box. Inside was a medal she didn't recognize. It looked old, well-worn. "This belonged to your father," Hayes explained. "It's his Ranger tab. Before he deployed that last time, he gave it to a friend and made him promise to keep it safe. When I found out Daniel Reeves's daughter was trying out for my unit, I tracked down that friend. He wanted you to have this." Emma held the small piece of cloth with trembling hands. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Your father knew you were special, Emma. He knew you had a gift. And he knew that if you worked hard enough, if you stayed dedicated enough, you could achieve anything." Hayes smiled. "You've proven him right, you've made him proud, and you've inspired a lot of people along the way. I just want to serve, sir, like he did." "You already are, and you're just getting started." That night, Emma called her mother. "I wish you could have been here, Mom. I wish Dad could have been here." "He was there, baby," her mother said softly. "I know he was, and I'm so proud of you I could burst." 2 years later, Emma competed in the Olympics as part of the U.S. shooting team. She was 20 years old, the youngest American on the team, and she won a bronze medal. The media loved her story. The girl who had promised her fallen father she would serve, who had been dismissed and underestimated, who had broken records and proven everyone wrong. But for Emma, it wasn't about the medals or the records or the recognition. It was about keeping a promise. It was about honoring her father's memory by being the best she could be. It was about proving that heart and determination mattered more than size or age or anyone else's expectations. And it was about inspiring the next generation of young shooters, especially young girls, to believe that they too could achieve the impossible if they worked hard enough and never gave up. 5 years after that first day at Fort Benning, Sergeant Emma Reeves stood in front of a group of young athletes at a shooting clinic. They were kids, mostly, ranging from 12 to 18, all with dreams of being great shooters. "I'm not going to lie to you," she told them. "People will doubt you, they'll underestimate you, they'll tell you you're too small, too young, too inexperienced, they'll laugh at your dreams." She paused, looking at each young face. "But here's what I learned, their doubt doesn't define you. Your dedication does, your discipline does. Your determination to keep shooting, keep practicing, keep improving, even when it's hard, even when you fail, even when everyone says you can't. That's what defines you." A small girl in the front row raised her hand. She couldn't have been more than 13. "What if you're scared? What if you don't think you're good enough?" Emma smiled and knelt down to the girl's level. "Then you remember why you started. You remember who believed in you when no one else did, and you take that fear and turn it into fuel." She touched the Ranger tab that she now wore on a chain around her neck, next to her father's dog tags. "My father taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's shooting anyway, it's trying anyway, it's never giving up no matter what." The young girl nodded, her eyes shining with determination. And Emma knew that somewhere, somehow, her father was smiling. She had kept her promise. She had made him proud. And she was just getting started.